Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership and Culture First podcast, where we discuss the complexities of leadership and culture, but also offer solutions to aspiring new and experienced leaders. We invite guests to share their knowledge and experience and ask those challenging questions. As coaches, we aim to provide real insights, enable reflection, and challenge thinking. Join us on our mission to unleash your leadership potential. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this episode. Today, for the first time, we have two guests joining Nikki and I, so we're delighted to welcome Katie Gooblar and Rebecca, or Becks, as we like to call her, Becks Herbert from Rebel Hive. Katie's an executive data and analytics leader and academic specialising in data culture literacy and readiness for change. Her work focuses on senior leaders and teams moving from well-intentioned activity to clear priorities. She brings lived experience of leading through ambiguity, transformation, and AI-enabled change. Becks is a specialist in organisational design and human-centred change and has a background in social justice. She supports leadership teams across sectors to navigate growth and transformation with clarity, dignity, and courage, especially when the work is uncomfortable or politically sensitive. Welcome, Becks and Katie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I guess first of all, just tell us a bit about yourselves. You know, your journeys, your leadership journeys, all those sorts of things, so our listeners can get to know you a little bit. Who wants to go first?
Well, first of all,
Katie?
thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, I usually jump in. It's just a habit. But thank you, Sharon. Becks is very used to it, and it works for us. Sharon, thank you so much for that introduction. I think we're just going to take you places with us, because that was the bit that we find really, really difficult. And always have, it's that self-promotion piece, isn't it? It's really, really hard. So, in terms of journey and where we've come from, I have always found myself really drawn to leadership posts. So I started work really young. So I started on a market stall in Leeds city centre at 12. And by 14, I'd had my first promotion to stall leader on the side stall. That was a really interesting.
This is a bit of you I knew nothing about, Katie. We're going to get all sorts of secrets coming out now.
Yeah, it's great.
I didn't realize this was where I was going to start. It was like so many years back, but there you go. And then just in different roles, I've navigated to working with and empowering other people, and that's just an aspect that I absolutely love. And I know other people will often say that I fell into leadership, or this was just the natural next progression. But for me, it hasn't been. There's an aspect of leadership that I just absolutely love, that centers about shining a light on other people and their capability and space for them to grow. And I think as a leader, and we speak about this quite a bit, is you have the influence of shining that light and that pathway for people, or casting a shadow and taking up that space. So I've had multiple different roles, both inside public sector and in private sector, and more recently in startup and in founding a business. But I'll hand over at this point to Becks, otherwise we won't find out where she's come from either.
We'll see where Becks started then, shall we? Yes.
I know. So when I was born, I grew. So where to begin? So my accent might give it away that I wasn't born in this country. So I herald from the States, and I came here for love. And when you do a thing like that, when you're kind of leaving your country and what you were expecting to happen, and then come to somewhere brand new, you do that with a sense of what? So every path that I thought I was going to take was no longer the path that I ended up taking. So I can't say I gravitate towards leadership roles. I gravitate towards purpose. So every choice I make was really values driven in terms of what can I do? How can I make a difference? How can I make an impact? And I think other people who have emigrated or become immigrant in a country maybe will resonate with that when you're in a country, you want to be able to contribute and have value and make sure that you're a good contributing member of society. So that was important to me. So all of the choices I made were kind of thinking, where can I make a difference? And that started in education, moved into housing and into social behavior, moved on to social justice. I was part of the big setting up the teams that looked at the Rotherham abuse investigation. So the type of work that I do and have led is always about whose voices aren't being heard and how can I amplify them to be heard. And so that I think now moves into the work we do at Rebel Hive, which is really, we have been very lucky to be in positions where we're kind of exclusive. Only our organizations have access to us. And so part of how we've set up our business is there will be people who will pay us to do work. And as part of doing that work, we can then reinvest that in terms of causes that we care about. So built into like every proposal, and part of our thing is our give back commitment. So if you work with Rebel Hive, you are also then giving 10 hours for us to then reinvest that in the sort of causes and the communities and the charities that we really care about. So it's been really cool to be able to set something up where it's really intentional, really purpose driven. So that's me.
That's fabulous. Thank
fantastic.
you. Yeah. I think one of the things that comes out for both of you, and our listeners will know I love asking this question, and it's becoming a little bit of habit. I have reflected on that. Is actually you've both seem to have those shared values. And how is that kind of manifested? Is that what brought you together? What is it about your values that you share?
I love how Rebecca describes this bit, so I'll let Becks go first on this one because I think you just sum it up so well.
Oh, that's very kind. So I suppose there's two parts to this. So yes, values are really important to us, and they're the kind of the lived behaviors. So there can't be something that just lives on a wall. It's those sort of everyday things that show up. And we had a lot of fun actually when we were trying to figure out how to replicate us into our company values. So we have rebellion, which is really about our love of positive disruption and always having that curiosity. You always see us anywhere with our hands coming up going, why? How about this? Where does that come from? So that shared love of curiosity, but we're not trying to blow things up, but that positive disruption and why do we always do it this way? What could be different is definitely a shared value for us. And then we've moved on to say what you mean and mean what you say. Because whilst that is kind of a simplified thing that we've probably all heard, it is so, so, so difficult to really be able to have the opportunity to say what you mean, to have the environment, the I've lost my words to be able to say it. But equally, so it's being able to say it and having the language and the platforms and the audiences, I think is where I was getting to. And then the secondary bit being, and then mean what you say, because often our word can be couched in some sort of politeness or it's a bit saccharine and it's not quite what we want to say because we haven't either thought about it or we don't really care what we're saying. So there's something about that say what you mean and mean what you say that we have made really core to us because we are both really different. And so actually we have to keep navigating. Is this what you mean? What do you mean here? And so that's kind of a core aspect of our...
Just for me to jump in on this one, I think just as way of explanation, because I think where you've just described the difference between us and what works particularly well is that need to really understand communication styles for us, because I am ADHD, so hence I'll jump in and where Becks gives me the space to do that and to offload in conversation. But equally, that means that sometimes I just need real clear conversation on what are the expectations we're trying to achieve, where is the priority sit, and being held accountable for that. And I didn't always know that was what I would need from working partnerships, and where values would often rub for me in the past were because I'd be, and to our fourth value of being generous, was I'd be really generous with my knowledge, with my time, with my support of other people at sacrifice for myself. And that's a really strong value for me, is that we will be generous with our time, but we expect it from the people that we work with also. And I think that's one of the core drivers. So everything we do is values based, and where we can now have the opportunity to decide whether people fit within those value streams for us, or whether it's just not something that we would want to be involved in and get involved. And you don't always have that opportunity when you're working in a large corporate organization with deep-rooted cultures and subcultures and politics with a little p and all of those things. And I think that's where values bring people together, and shared values bring working practice together as well.
Yeah.
How, with these strong values between the two of you, you can see there's a synergy, but there's also there's a light between the two of you that helps you to move forward. But how did your worlds collide? How did you set this up and say, oh, you know what? Let's make a change on our own without that corporate badge behind us?
There's a story of the practical how, and then there's the mutual story that we've got of appreciation that sat behind it. So I was a massive fangirl of Becks, and we joined an organisation at the same time, and we both joined the IOPC 12 years ago, so we've known each other quite a long time, and into the same role, but managed it and approached it very differently. I was just coming back from maternity leave. Becks had slightly older children and was smashing it, and was just a confident, self-assured, strong opinions. And that was something that I was I just didn't feel like that, having just come back from maternity. So I was like questioning my own value in that space, and it was just the right pairing at the right time. And about 3 years ago, we had a conversation about maybe we should set up something together, and the timing was just never quite right. And then the universe has kind of aligned to this point, and has just allowed us to go. I now feel expert in, or specialist in, the area and field I have been working in for the last 12 years since we first joined and met together. And Becks has been doing the same in very different disciplines. And there's just this, like you said, this synergy that's pulled us back together that now feels the right time. That's my view of the lens, but what's yours?
Have you got a different story to that one, or is it?
So funny. She makes me blush when she says that. Like I was ever the cool kid. She always says this. I was like, interesting. So again, isn't it lovely, and how important that sort of Johari's window stuff is?
Yeah.
Like you don't really realize the impact that you're having until somebody shares it with you. So, so I accept the compliment. I think it's beautiful to be seen that way. Certainly wasn't what I was feeling. I had a 4-year-old and I think a 2-year-old at the time, was running around being like, I don't know actually how I'm supposed to do all this stuff. But you just find a way. And we had an incredible group of people that we had joined with that were equally awesome. So I think we were kind of all pushing ourselves in a sense of how do we make this this opportunity really matter. Meanwhile, Katie had leapt ahead out of this small pond that we were in into like leading our sort of data teams and performance stuff. So I think that there was some definitely mutual respect in that space. But the thing that we really bonded over was probably as we moved into our more senior roles within that same organization, was being the females in a very male dominated industry, and being able to assert something where everything that we were bringing in was new. We shifted some of the language that was happening. So we went from, if nobody is happy, we're doing a good job. Absolutely not. That is not how it's going to work. You can treat people with dignity and respect and have a service-led environment. And you can absolutely do that with excellent data that backs up your decision-making, that is modern. So we were always in those sort of really disruptive roles. Got a bit of a name for ourselves, but that also then meant that we could be our tribe. So we would always, there would almost be like an intake where I could just tell she was about to tee something up. It wouldn't matter what she said. I would have figured out a way to wrap myself around it to keep bolstering the conversation and bring people in, because they were the right conversations that needed to be had. So, yeah, the feeling is mutual.
Yeah. And Nikki, you got me at the other end of that, because we met at the RCN, didn't we?
We
so
did.
You got I'm so frustrated with not having the ability to influence and change in the ways that I want it to happen as quickly as I want it to happen. So you got the other end of that.
And that's one of the reasons why I kind of invited you onto the podcast, really, because what I saw at that time working with you was somebody that was really innovative, and really driven and could bring so much change, and was really stoic. And I have to say stoic there, Katie, because you and I will know exactly what we mean by that. But actually, there was sometimes the culture and the environment isn't ready for the individual that is in that environment, and that can really squash an individual. So how do you deal with that, the both of you? Because you've mentioned there two things that have come out in our other podcasts. One is females in senior leadership. The second is having a tribe. Our previous guest actually talked about having a gang. So it's an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm. That's it's a great perspective as well, because I think you don't realize it at the time. It's the thing that comes out when you reflect back and you talk about, what did I actually learn during that time, and how did I almost bounce back? Where was my resilience in those moments? Because that's what you're calling on, is how can I build up resilience so that next time that happens, because there's always going to be a next time in the culture, organization wide, in the types of legacy complex regulated industries that we're drawn to because they're purpose and value led, are going to have those same cultures and subcultures and challenges. So what do I do differently? How do I present that, or do the same? You know, what worked, and how did I build that resilience? And for me, the strength of that tribe, that group, relationships has been what has driven me every time. So making friends in the places that I know are going to have the most resistance. You know, I often sit between data functions, business functions, and IT functions, somewhere in that space in between, in the gaps, in translation, in mediation often. And actually having people on a personal level that you're having engagement and conversation with means that when something really tricky comes up and that you have to work through, and it's difficult to do that, you've got people that you can get alternative perspective, you can bounce ideas, you can think differently and say, what am I not seeing in this situation? Because I think it's easy for people to have an opinion and jump to their opinion with a bias or with how they've seen the problem, and not as easy to see or recognize what other constraints other people might be under. So what regulation, what limitations are forcing their hand in the way that they're responding. And yeah, so having a tribe is a great way to put it, really. Yeah.
You've kind of made me think of a metaphor that we love metaphors. We're a little obsessed with them, but we were kind of talking about environment and environments you're in, and playing around with the idea that, you know, you wouldn't put an English rose garden in the middle of a desert. That's not where it's going to thrive. And equally, you're not going to plunk your cactus in the middle of, you know, the wettest place on earth. So there's something about that level of self-awareness that helps you understand, like, what it is about you. What do you need from the environment that you are in? And recognizing that both the system and you as an individual, sometimes there is compatibility and sometimes there is not. And it is probably a lesson we all have to learn when we have stayed too long in a relationship or a work relationship or an environment where it just did not fit us, and sometimes to our detriment. And there are probably plenty of men and women who have stayed far too long in relationships or work environments that was to their detriment because they believed they could change something. And sometimes you can, and you have, like in change management, you have to have that belief that it's capable of change. But sometimes those things are just not compatible. And it's not necessarily that the system is wrong or that the individual is wrong. It is the fit and the compatibility. And so sometimes you have to have that level of self-awareness, which is, where can I have the most impact and influence? But equally, where do I get my energy from? Where will I be fed? Well, where will I be nourished? And I think particularly women in leadership, that's got to be something we hold for ourselves, because when you are generous, you will give everything, and then there is nothing left. And so we've got to be our own kind of boundary setters in that space. But I do think sometimes there is a point where you just realize it's a cactus that doesn't belong in a garden and a rose that doesn't belong in the desert. Neither are wrong, neither are bad. It just is what it is. Go find the place where you can nourish your soul and do the things that you need to do.
Absolutely.
It's really hard as well.
Yeah.
It's really hard when you're starting out, right? Like, that is really hard when you're just new to career, because if you haven't sharpened your tools and you don't know whether you're a rose or a cactus yet, you feel that it's on you. You feel that that you're not the right fit, not that the organization isn't the right fit for you. Sorry, I jumped in.
No, it's
No,
good.
and that's a really good point, actually, is that people who are starting out, or even those leaders that have been there for a while, we internalize sometimes a lot of that pressure and a lot of that self-criticism. And I, I will say it, particularly as women, we do that. So actually, that's really good advice for people. It isn't often the environment or even you. It's just you don't fit, and that's okay if you don't fit. So how do you move on into somewhere where you feel that you can flourish? That's the really important bit.
Mhm.
And just noticing whether it's the wider context and the organization and its values in its entirety, or whether it's other specific people within an organization, because there are so many sub layers and so many dynamics to leadership. And I love that when Bex and I sort of introduce ourselves, I kind of go down that. I went into the traditional, more senior leadership routes where you've got that sort of a title and you're going to board meetings, etc. Bex goes down a very different route in that it's all about influence and connection, and went through a stage and still holds by it, I'm sure, without titles. Like, so because it's not the title that matters, it's the ability to influence and shape what you're doing, and sometimes that means sitting in the background and not having those direct front of house kind of conversations, and just accepting that there are those different leadership styles and influences, different levers to pull. And sometimes it can be an individual in an organization that's blocking those things. It can be a policy, a process. They're my biggest pet hates, is where somebody is standing behind a policy or a process that just doesn't work for anyone. And it gets in the way of doing great work and adding value. Or is it the organization and its ethos and the it's so big and so slow to change and so directive in its agenda that then it might not just be the right fit. So,
And what do you think? Because I think this is a really interesting thing to talk about. In terms of how does it how can it change people once they recognize that? Is it liberation? Is it fear? How do people respond to that recognition of, do you know what? It's okay for me to think this isn't the right place for me.
Well,
what are your experiences of that?
you go.
shall I go?
You
I
go.
often, do you know, there's a moment, it's like any feedback. Like if we look back and we think about somebody who told us that really hard thing we needed to hear, we didn't want to hear it at the time. We didn't probably appreciate them or like them for it. But it's with the power of hindsight as you move away from, because you're usually in an emotional and it can be causing you pain or sort of suffering. And yet we're enduring it because we've built up all this stuff around us. That means we've got resilience, but we're maybe missing the positive side of things. So we're enduring. And we didn't realize that we were merely surviving and not thriving. And so there's something in that disruption, in that break, that you've just you gotta ride the flow. And if you were able to know it in the moment, you would have done it. So it's not until you get out of the moment that you can have the clarity of the growth, the experience, and that enables you to go, okay. Often what I find, so usually I'm the predecessor to a big conversation like that. I call them leave with dignity or stay with pride conversations. Because when I can tell somebody has got potential, or they are in a space where they're either drowning because they're not in the right role, or they are just languishing because they've given up. And these are the conversations I would have with them. And it's about motivation. It's about direction. If you literally are just coasting because you're like, retirement's coming, okay, I get that. I'm still going to need some value back from you in terms of how do we pass your knowledge on to the younger generation? How can we do this? How can we do that? But if you are languishing or you just don't fit, the types of conversations we have is, so what's going to spark that interest in you? Like, when was the last time you felt that real motivation and drive and interest? What does that feel like? And do you want that feeling? Because if you're not getting it here, why are you here? There are so many choices that you can make, and you are choosing to put yourself through pain and suffering. Understand that you are choosing this, because if you give your power away and it becomes somebody else's choice, that's even worse. So recognizing there's that sense of, like, when we say empowering, I really do mean take those choices and decide, what is the future I want for myself? What do I want to build for myself? And is it hard? Hell yeah, it's hard. But you've got to start with that acknowledgement that you're worth it, that you deserve it, that you have value. So they're not easy conversations, but they're definitely those sort of resistant. You don't want to do it, but once you have done it, you're like, ah, or it's still scary. Like, let's be honest, it's still scary. We're all grown-ups. It's still scary being a grown-up.
Yeah.
It calls to me in thinking about sort of the wisdom that, like, it's taken me this many years, like to get to middle age and take all that wisdom. But what I'm seeing a lot more now is, I did that through experience and through having coaching, and we were talking before about sort of coaching and the importance of that. And it's taken a lot longer in the generation I sit to be okay and transparent and open with that. But I'm seeing a lot more of sort of 18, 19, 20-year-olds being more confident in that space and accepting that they own their own future, and they're asking and demanding for more through their questioning skills, their being, their ways of accepting the world around them or not, and challenging it. So I think there's a seismic shift that's occurred in setting that tone in what leadership looks like and can be different and can represent now, that's opening this alternative way of being, I think, for a younger generation that's following, that's come through asking better questions, challenging the status quo a little bit more. That's about, I don't know, there's just something about earlier stage wisdom now that I'm really feeling and seeing around us. If that makes sense.
That's an interesting one, because we hear so much negativity around the younger generation and what they're not doing. That's the good face, Becks. That's because we hear it all the time. They're not this, they're not that, they can't do this, they can't do that. And I'm sure that people said that about us when we were that age. But to hear something positive about the younger generation, because they are the leaders of the future, it's going to be their world. So how do we help them?
Yeah, I mean I'm like, I've kind of got like when people say that. I'm my daughter is sort of 17, turning 18. The emotional intelligence that she displays, like we're mad at kids because they want to understand the world around them, because they want to be caring about they have empathy, and we think that's a bad thing. Like, my children have grown up really understanding, like, they celebrate pride, like they really want to make sure that people who are from the LGBTQ community are supported and cared for. They don't understand why anybody gives a crap about who you love. Like, they're like, they've just grown up with that. And we have the best dinner table conversations where my 17-year-old, who's currently doing like A-level sociology, she's just so aware of the environments that she lives in, and this sense of like, why do people care so much about something that really is a personal choice? And don't get her started on women's health issues and how you can have politics that are completely lobbying against women's reproductive rights. She's like, is this still happening? So I disagree entirely that they can't do something. They are challenging our acceptance of the crap that we put up with. And they are challenging these stereotypes that that you just have to endure and suffer. No, why should we? I mean, in the world of AI, we know the types of conversations that people are having is, we have a choice about how we use this incredible technology, and we can do it to line the pockets of billionaires, or we could actually be giving back time in our diaries that we could reinvest in our communities and building social cohesion. Why does work always have to be this paid work as opposed to the social value of doing the work we need to do? Absolutely on my soapbox now, but I refute it. I refute it.
I absolutely love as well that the narrative. Well, hate it. I love the narrative that is the generation of today. Like, they're this, but we, the generation before, created that. So who is at fault of any negative stereotype of current generation, other than to hold up a mirror to who we are and the generations that we've created? So I almost like, it's a round of applause anytime that I hear anybody say like, oh, well, they like the term snowflakes or they're don't get involved, and they're challenging, they won't put in the extra hours for free, and looking around going, yeah, and
Yeah.
you instilled that. You were the people that were complaining about
Why
that didn't
should
come home
they?
for dinner.
Yeah.
Like you're the absent parent who wasn't available to them. Of course, that's influenced how they want to do things differently. So yeah,
Yeah, I absolutely. We've had many a conversation around this, haven't we, Nikki, about how
Oh,
I think I'm really proud of younger generation who in the workplace know what they want to do and know that working part-time, for example, is right for them because it gives them the work-life balance that they need. Yet organisations aren't set up for
no,
that, particularly not, in healthcare. Why would you give of your whole soul to an organisation who in return doesn't give you that respect, that recognition, make you feel valued? And I'm on my soapbox now. Why would you
yeah.
do that? And
Right.
who's got it right? You know?
yeah. What that
Yeah, I'll get off
causes
my
is a
soapbox
conflict.
now.
No, stay on it. But what it does do is it causes a conflict of difference within organisations, because what actually then happens is you have a leadership style that says, yes, we're gonna manage our team. We've got the autonomy to manage our team in this way, and this is what I believe. Strong to my values. And then in another part of the organisation, it's an absolute no. You're 3 minutes late to the day, therefore you need to make you 3 minutes late up after the end of the day, and how that can impact the sort of injustice of an operation within an organization when it hasn't got a clear way of being that's morally accepted, or that's justified in its flexibility and its nature. I'm seeing it so much more now, where the whole return to work and the impact in workplaces, like physical location places, the impact that that's having on different people in different ways. So that intergenerational workplace now is, I think, much more different than it's ever been before. So we've got people entering the workforce who, uh, uh, went through schooling during COVID, have a very different growing up experience of what delivering work and completing tasks looks like to the generations before.
There's a
Yeah, I think.
fantastic movie, and other movies are available out there, but this one is called The Intern, where it's a young environment and a young workplace with an older intern that comes in and has to share experience and how he fits into that, turning up in a suit with a briefcase. It's Robert De Niro, I think. And it's really one that I think people should watch because it demonstrates exactly what you're saying there, Katie. There's different ways to approach this and different things that we should start to take account of. Because, as I've said before, this is their world. This is a different world. It's not the world that I came into when I was 17, and thank goodness for that.
Mm,
I think I'm absolutely.
yeah.
This is filling me with joy, this conversation, because today I've just read a blog around cultural humility, and essentially this is what all of this is. It's understanding where every single other person that you encounter and you you work with, it's understanding their viewpoint, their values, their what drives them. It's cultural, it's sociological, it's everything. And I think we even do things like write policies and processes in organisations without actually understanding the impact of that on every single individual that we work with. So I'm going to stop now because it's just filling me with joy, this conversation. Thank you.
What's really interesting though, Sharon, on the back of that is the flip side of that is actually where we've landed sort of with the work that we that's driving Rebel Hive, is that when that doesn't work, how do you lift your head above that and be able to see and work through it? Because it's really difficult to do from within the moment, within the culture, within um the frictions that have already grown and have slowly sort of seeped throughout the foundations of the ways of working in the building, and it's you don't see it. It's not the spurting broken pipe in the street that everybody rushes to and tries to fix. It's the little slow breaking of all of the structures, the soil content, like the taking away one brick at a time from underneath, and then all of a sudden you end up with a sinkhole in the middle of a project or in between teams that is like, oh, where did that come from? We didn't see this coming, and there's a whole load of finger pointing and blaming. So we've taken that same concept that you were just talking about there from, and I haven't heard that term before. I've made a note of it because I think that's really fascinating, is that cultural humility of understanding where people have not just where they are now, but where they've come from to get to that point and what they've got going on outside of the place, that their work is only one part of them. So what else is going on for them means that how they show up to work is impacted. And actually, what we're now doing is helping people get through it when it's already gone too far, where it's already the problem that you're talking about internally, it's already the friction, it's already the sticky, messy bit that nobody really knows how to deal with, or it's nobody's job, so therefore it just doesn't really get done. It's just that's the problem. That's why everything's stalling. That's why the strategy's drifting. That's why everybody knows it, but they don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
It's that space, isn't it, where we all, I think people consciously know that you're supposed to go, it's the system, it's the process, not the people. And to a degree, yes, the system designs all these things, so that it is always a system issue. Process to a degree is really easy to kind of go left to right. Okay, let's fix this and understand it. And the way we always describe it is, when you do like the big like brown paper journey mapping in a room, and you do all the process left to right, and how's it going to work, and you get really excited. Katie and I would then go, okay, let's flip that paper. And this is an exercise that Tony Nichols does, and he was one of my mentors previously. So you flip the paper and then you say, so what are the reasons why we're not doing that? What's actually happening? And again, it's the shine model in terms of what's the iceberg that's happening below the surface. And it's relational, it's people. And so it's not a person's fault, but it is the way in which people interact with each other, the incivilities, the hurt, the cliques, all of those sorts of things are the reasons that a beautiful process on paper doesn't work. And if you neglect those things, pretend that they don't happen, brush them under the carpet, guess what happens? And it's exactly Katie's metaphor of how it erodes underneath the surface. So we like to talk about making the invisible visible, because you can start to talk about those things. And again, it's not rocket science, but when you're in it, it's usually not safe enough to call out those things, because you're now putting your head above the parapet. You're too in it to be able to call those things out. So the independent facilitation that creates those sort of framework and those boundaries and actions that is shared in collective ownership, that's a lot of the stuff that we do as our bread and butter. And we always say it kind of fits between, it's not necessarily the people space, because if it goes that far, then you're going into HR grievance type territory. Too far. If it's in the process space, again, we can do your business mapping and different stuff, but it's kind of boring. You get the cool business analysts in to do that. And then, of course, when you've got your purpose, if it was a purpose or a strategic thing, well, what did you expect your people to do then? If you haven't set the direction and got clear governance parameters, that's a you thing. But the space in between is all the relational stuff, the incivilities or the proactive stuff that does or doesn't happen. You've got to really be intentional and deliberate in creating and addressing. Otherwise, it's kind of like taking a shower. You really notice when people stop doing it.
Yes. Absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you. Such a really rich discussion. One of the things our listeners will know really well on this podcast is we ask all our guests to ask a question of the next guest. So we have a question for you from a previous guest. So you can take it, one at a time or together. It's entirely up to you. So this is about being a leader maker. So how are you a leader maker? And what are some of the things that you do to create leaders?
Ooh, nice question.
Great question. I'm going to jump in, actually, Katie. Rarely I'm going to go before you, because I want to reflect something that you said, which was again about as a leader, you've got to be conscious of where your light is. So your light can cast can kind of cast a direction and illuminate things, but it also causes a shadow. And so one of the things that you need to really be mindful of when you're in a leadership position is where you're shining your light, because you will always be leaving a shadow. So you've got to be always swiveling and thinking, who am I leaving in the shadow because my light is directing something in a certain focus. So there's a real sense of being really conscious about whose voice isn't in the room. How do I say their names? How do I give that visibility? Because that becomes our role in terms of advocacy and things like that. But you have got to have that self-awareness about it can't just be the person who's like you. And that's really easy, isn't it? Because we have an affinity. We talked a little bit about tribe, and you can start to collect loads of people who are just like you. Terrible idea. You want the people who are different to you. You want that culture add, not the culture fit. And so I think if you want to be a leader maker, you've got to be really, really conscious about looking for the difference, looking for those voices that maybe aren't necessarily saying the same things you are, because that's where your attention needs to be. If they're already like you, like if they're like us, they're already going to find their way to the top, because try and stop us, right? But it's where can you really find, where are you not looking? That would be my inverse, I suppose, of that question.
Super.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
I'm going to build on that, because I think the practical action that you can take to do that is not try to make everyone the same. So I think to make leaders, you have to see and amplify what's in them and what's good in them and their value and their direction. I can remember quite early on in some of my own development thinking and being shown that the people who really strive are the people who surround themselves with the people who can do things better than them in different areas. And then as a leader, your role becomes collecting those around you who can be brilliant at what they do. And that doesn't mean that I have to know what they do to a higher standard or level than them, but I know how to get the best out of them, or to ask the right questions to challenge them, or to open doors where they're finding that block is happening for them, whether that be a role review, whether it be introducing them to people that they haven't met or who are experts in their own field that they need to learn in a different direction from that I can't offer. So I think to create leaders, you have to stand sort of in that center, like a bit like a lighthouse, to Beck's point, like continuously turning, going, what do you need? What I'm not going to pull you up on is the things that you're really bad at. And everybody has that list of things that they don't like doing, the things that they're not great at doing, and the things that they'll self-critique for. So you never need to do that, because they're likely doing it themselves already. So all you need to do is go, okay, there are certain things you have to be able to do in this role. And if this isn't the right role for you, that's a different conversation. But if this is the right role for you, how do we take you from where you are up the rung that is right for you? And then when you get to the point that you're at the top of that rung, you go, right, let's make the next step work for you. That might not be staying in my team. That's unlikely to be staying in my team. That's going to be, you're now at the professional level to take that further and to grow even more and opening that door for them. So the practical action is doing that exercise of going, how can I help this person shine and develop into their own field despite my limited knowledge in that field?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going
That was
to
a good
challenge
question.
you. Yes, now to challenge you. Question for our next guest, please. What would you like them to answer for you?
So I think I'm going to put them on the spot a little bit as well.
Okay.
But thank you to whoever asked us ours. I think you said it was Stacey. So thank you, Stacey, for giving us such a great question. I think a question we'd like to ask is, with the benefit of hindsight, what would you stand your ground on harder? So I think it's often easy for people to say, what would you do differently? But what would you reflect on now and say, I knew I was right. I wish I'd have just held it tighter.
That's a fantastic question.
I
Thank
told you, right?
Yeah, you said she'd come up with some
Exactly.
great questions. She did.
Exactly.
She
We
did.
are definitely going to publish a book of Katie questions. The Rebel Hive Collective book of Katie questions. It's going to be coming to a.
You need a worksheet, don't you, for to go through
Yeah.
in your own
Yeah.
answers, so that everybody's jumping on that, so you can blow them all out of the water with that one, Katie.
Yeah. The problem is I don't remember them. So Becks is like, she's like, oh, that's a good question.
Need to start recording them. Brilliant. I know, and I think that would be a
Yeah.
really good question for our listeners to reflect on as well themselves, as to
Mhm.
what would they have stood their ground on harder. Super. And that's a really lovely way to finish off our chat today. Just to say a massive thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you both, and we've all had a soapbox
Completely.
moment, which is nice. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks for hosting us as well.
thank you.
Thank you. If
So-
people want to get hold of you, though, how do they get
Oh, yes.
hold of you both?
Becks, you go.
Yes, sorry, I just had a sleep there in the moment. So we have a website, so it's rebelhive.co.uk, or you can email us hello@rebelhive.co.uk, or you'll find us on LinkedIn. We're very active, usually posting lots of stuff. So we say follow the bees. So if you look up Rebecca Herbert, Katie Gooblar, or Rebel Hive, there will be a little bee emojis next to it as well, so you'll know it's us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank
Super.
you.
Thanks everyone for listening, for joining and listening with us today. I hope you've got something from it. I certainly have. I think
Me
it
too.
all seems we've got something from it. If you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing to our podcast, we'd very much appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.